Morning, Mike. Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Staffordshire County Council's Cabinet meeting today, Wednesday, the 15th of November, 2023. Item number 1, apologies for absence. Mr. Bradbury.
Chairman, I'm not in receipt of any apologies for this morning.
I can give 2 then in that case, Councillor Ian Parry and Councillor Victoria Wilson. Any others? No. Right, second item, declarations of interest in accordance with Standing Order 16. Are there any declarations of interest, ladies and gentlemen? For the record, nobody is indicating. Agenda item number 3 is decision notice of the meeting held on the 18th of October 2023. Is it your wish that I sign that off as a correct record? It is so moved. Agenda item number 4 is the Leaders' Update. Colleagues, you'll recall that most times on the Leaders' Update I tried to steal the Deputy Leader's thunder, but today, with a break with tradition, I've decided not to do that, so you will have the spotlight entirely to yourself, Councillor White. First of all, remembrance events. As home to the National Memorial Arboretum, Staffordshire is incredibly proud of its strong links with the armed forces, both past and present. Just recently, we were delighted to work with the Tri-Services in Newcastle to help them secure a permanent base for their work in supporting veterans. And I'd also like to thank Councillor Simon Tagg and Newcastle and Lyme Borough Council officers for their help on that as well. Being a former soldier myself, I think it's particularly important to remember those who gave their lives so we could enjoy the freedoms we have today. Putting all politics aside, Staffordshire showed how much it valued this sacrifice by paying tribute and showing our appreciation to mark Remembrance Sunday across the county at the weekend. And thank you to all those county councillors and officers who attended events across the county. Here to help. With winter and Christmas rapidly approaching, people may be worried about the extra costs that this may bring, and Staffordshire families are no different. Since October 2022, together with partners, we have helped almost 140,000 households via the Household Support Fund. This year, the fund will ensure that those eligible, such as care leavers, once again receive a little extra too. For parents and carers, we will be there to offer free activities for those eligible during Christmas holidays, and our own libraries also offer warm spaces and so many more activities than simply borrowing books. Our wonderful community and voluntary partners also go the extra mile to support local communities, and our Here to Help page is a good place to start to check to see if you may be entitled to a little extra support. Moving on to our financial priorities. Following from the King's speech, the government will soon be detailing its spending priorities for the county as part of the Chancellor's autumn statement this month. Residents, businesses and indeed local councils will be examining in detail what it might mean for them and for the areas where they live and work. As a county council, we continue to manage our budget and the pressures on our services, and will soon be finalising our own spending priorities. We remain committed to balancing our books while still promoting good education, training and job opportunities, growing our economy, investing in good roads, protecting our amazing countryside, leading the way on reducing our carbon footprint, fostering better and more independent lives, and of course protecting our most vulnerable children and adults, but always aspiring to do more. When we go on to Let's Talk Staffordshire, I think what we want to be talking about is what is great about Staffordshire. There are so many things I've just mentioned which spring to mind, but it is the people that make us truly exceptional. They hold communities together, give without being asked, and always inspire us to do even better. That is why we are now asking them for their ideas on the future of their local communities. What a community means to them, how are they helping others in their local area, and how can we help to get more people involved and improve their local areas? This is the first survey of its kind in Staffordshire, so please have your say by visiting Let's Talk Staffordshire on our website. I think there's nothing better than helping somebody else out. It gives you a real feeling of actually achieving something, and I would really strongly encourage people to be as involved as they can in that survey. And now on to our main agenda for this morning. The first item being, or agenda item number 5, being minutes of the meeting held of the Property Subcommittee on the 1st of November 2023. Can I have that as a correct record? Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is Staffordshire Means Back to Business, oral update brought to you by the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Leader. Very kind of you not to steal my thunder, but it's a relatively short and sweet update this month, although we do have an agenda item a little later on, which is quite significant, our employability and skills strategy. So this month, I'd like to update Cabinet on what's happening with our Chatterley Valley West employment site scheme. As you'll recall, last month we reported some delays in that, and I have an update to give you. I also have a report on some of the work that we're doing in terms of supporting people into higher skilled, higher paid jobs, and our work in supporting businesses, particularly business startups in Staffordshire. But before that, I always like to give Cabinet an update on jobs figures, and frustratingly, I couldn't do that last month because the data was delayed being released from central government. But thankfully, we have the latest data released yesterday, which reports in Staffordshire an increase in 335 claimants during the last period, which takes us to a rate of universal credit claimants of 2.8% of our working age population. That compares to an average for the region of 4.8% and an average for England of 3.8%. So we consider to be far better performing than those areas. That is not to reduce the importance of those numbers, though, and I particularly highlight our jobs brokerage service, which we launched earlier this year, which is there to help people to access the jobs and skills required to get into those jobs that are needed. And in a Staffordshire economy where there are still around about 1.6 jobs available for every person who's seeking one. The youth claimant count in Staffordshire saw an increase of 40 claimants, and again that stands considerably below the regional and national averages, which are 6.8% and 5.1% respectively. The other thing which is not contained in the written report, but which I will highlight to colleagues, is the very welcome news this morning that inflation has dropped to 4.6%. That's half its peak from earlier this year, and it still has a way to go before I think anybody will feel comfortable with where inflation is, but that reduction is really quite significant and in quite a short period of time, and that I think will feed into those employment figures in due course. Cabinet colleagues will be aware that one of our economic priorities is to support residents in taking advantage of higher paid employment opportunities. And it's particularly welcome, again, in that respect, to note that the household income figures in Staffordshire are outperforming national and regional averages, with disposable income per head in Staffordshire increasing by 4.4% over the last year, compared to 4% nationally and 3.7% in the West Midlands. So whilst we've got those levels of inflation still higher than we would like, you can see that in Staffordshire, productivity and wage growth is outperforming what we are seeing around the country. And I think that will particularly, again, be felt in the pockets of our residents as we see that inflation figure reduce further over the coming months. Last month, I updated Cabinet on some of our issues with the delivery of one of our key employment sites at Chatterley Valley West in Newcastle under Lyme. And particularly the closure of Peacock Hay Road. That was due to one of the subcontractors working on the site going to administration. I'm pleased to report to colleagues that a new subcontractor has been engaged by the site developer Harworth Group, and that's the County Council's infrastructure partner, Amy. And they recommence work on the site on Monday, and they're working very hard to catch up with where the delivery plan was intended to be. This is a really important site for the county and for Newcastle under Lyme Borough that will see the creation of 1,700 jobs, a large proportion of them being highly skilled, and in an area of the county that has been very much in need of that redevelopment, a somewhat stranded site that we, working along with partners in the public and private sector, have been able to unlock. So it's very good news indeed that that's now progressing. Supporting people who want to start and grow a business is another one of our top priorities. And I've previously updated Cabinet on the work that we've been doing to encourage increasing levels of entrepreneurship in the county, and particularly business startups and step-ups. With that in mind, I'm pleased to report that the Shire Hall Business Centre is now at 85% occupancy, which is ahead of our target for this year. And the short-term hot desking opportunities there continue to be exceptionally popular, and it's something that we will be looking to roll out to more of our business centres around the county. The other schemes that feed into this are our Staffordshire Startup Mentoring Programme, which I'm now pleased to report has supported nearly 600 people in receiving training in the practicalities of starting up their own business. And of those, 279 who've completed the course have now set up their own businesses, which we're particularly pleased to see. Our Get Started and Grow programme has now also supported more than 194 owners who've been trading for up to 5 years with professional services support in areas such as marketing, accountancy, digital, legal and human resources consultancy. So those are a few examples of the things that we're doing to support the Staffordshire economy, both in large schemes such as Chatterley Valley, but also in smaller businesses to start up and grow, and all leading into those figures regarding employment and wage growth, which at the end of the day are the whole point of it. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you. I don't see anybody indicating, so with that we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the agenda item number 7, Strategic Vision for Early Years, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leader, and good morning, everyone. So we are a hugely ambitious county. We know that investing in the child's earliest years can pave the way for their future. A good start in life is likely to lead to better outcomes into adulthood. In recent years, developments nationally have focused on supporting parents with affordable childcare to enable more people to work. Yet this is also an opportunity to ensure that children in their earliest years have access to high quality play and learning experiences that pave the way for later life. This paper sets out our plan in Staffordshire to achieve this, and I'll talk firstly briefly about the national context, the local context, and then what and how we intend to deliver that going forward. So nationally, in the spring budget of this year, the Chancellor announced reforms to childcare for parents, children and the economy. This investment will provide additional funded hours for childcare, helping working families with their childcare costs and empowering them to progress their careers and also support their families. The new entitlements will be introduced in phases. The government will soon be funding up to 80% of all childcare places in England, up from 50% before the spring budget. The biggest change is the extension of the subsidised 30-hour entitlement from 3 and 4-year-olds down to 9-month-olds. So in March of 2023, it also announced national wraparound childcare scheme, providing schools and local authorities with funding to support the setup of wraparound provision for primary school children from September of 24. So it is good and useful that these are being phased in, because this is quite a task for us to be able to achieve. So locally, as I've said, our ambition is for every child in Staffordshire, whatever their background, to have the opportunity to have the best start in life. High quality early education is proven to have a positive impact on children's outcomes in both the short and long term, and we will continue to work with partners in our early year settings to make a positive difference for all children and for families. So how will we operate this in Staffordshire going forward? So the opportunity to be able to do this has been made a little bit easier after 14 members of staff have moved from Entrust back to the local authority from their existing early education and child care scheme. And those staff, together with our own early years team and our childcare sufficiency team, will be working together so that we can implement these schemes, working together with providers as smoothly as we possibly can, going forward. Within that, we've been able to develop a overarching structure that is detailed within the paper, the details of which I won't go into, but it's given us the opportunity to continue funding what we were doing previously from the Early Outcomes Fund in two really important areas, and that's our Hungry Little Minds programme, and that's aimed at parents of newborn children up until school age, which has been particularly successful, having been rolled out, so we will be able to continue that. And also the early communication screening, which is again something that is really important in being able to identify youngsters that might have speech and language difficulties or poor development that does need addressing. So those two areas will absolutely continue in this new strategy going forward, and the way we work, particularly with providers in Staffordshire. We have a particularly good record of ensuring that the providers are all good and outstanding, and that every parent of children who want nursery provision are able to get it, and we hope we are pretty confident that we will be able to continue with that going forward, despite the difficulties that do exist in the provider network post-COVID. So 97% of all our settings are good or outstanding. Of those that have been required improvement, 100% of those have shown improvement at the next inspection. And the surveys we do and the information we get back from our providers to ensure that we are able to have sufficiency in Staffordshire have a 99% return rate. And officers meet regularly in a group they've put together with the providers, and particularly when I've attended Schools Forum and other things, the providers represented there are praise highly the efforts that we make in Staffordshire to work with the sector. 67% of children who reach good level of development at the end of reception. That is not as good as it was prior to COVID, but is still higher than the national average. Children who have had language difficulties, speech and language programme has been recognised by the Department of Education, Ofsted, as being a really successful model with impressive impact data, the details of which are within the paper. So it is with some confidence that I think that the early years paper that we have here, and that strategic vision and how we work with the sector to be able to deliver that in Staffordshire, is well served by the way the team is being restructured going forward. So, Leader, unless there's any particular questions, I'm happy to read out the recommendations.
So I just wanted to make an observation. It's striking, isn't it, after all my time in local government, nothing ever stands still in children's services, ever. We're always looking at trying to find ways to make improvements, and we rely on our staff to deliver those improvements. And I just wanted to praise our staff, and particularly Neelam, for the hard work that you do all the time in making sure that our children are well looked after. And just thank them for doing their best, really. And this programme that you brought forward this morning highlights all the ongoing work that we have, all the care that we show to our children, and yeah, it is something that's constantly evolving, and it's something that we are constantly striving to improve. And I warmly endorse this report this morning, and thank you for bringing it to us. So without anybody else indicating, I think if you could go to the recommendations and we can take a vote.
Thank you, Leader. And could I just endorse the comments you made there, particularly about our staff across children's services. So the recommendations are A, Cabinet endorses the strategic vision for early years service and acknowledge the contribution that will make to Staffordshire's strategic plan. B, endorse the principles for the proposed reorganisation of the early years delivery model detailed within the report and agree support for officers to further develop this model with staff and stakeholders. C, delegate authority to the Director of Children's Services in consultation with the lead member for children and young people and the lead member for education and SEND to approve the final staffing structure for the service. And D, endorse the planned budget profile for the early years service and investment in new areas of delivery.
You've heard the recommendations. All those in favour? For the record, that is unanimous. Moving to agenda item number 8, the Climate Change Annual Report 2023 and the Draft Climate Change Action Plan Revision 3, November 2023. Councillor Tagg, we're with you.
Thank you, Leader. I'm really pleased to bring these reports today, which show significant strides since this council declared its climate emergency in 2019, and with a headlined 50% reduction in our emissions. We know that the County Council has committed through its strategic plan and made it a core priority in its strategic plan to strive to make Staffordshire more sustainable. The report refers to 4 documents: the annual report on the progress we've made, the Draft Climate Change Action Plan Revision 3, a risk register, and also the Community Impact Assessment. The annual report is the 3rd since we declared that climate emergency in 2019. It's tracking our progress towards that net zero target of 2050, and also highlights and celebrates our progress as a council, working with our partners in the districts and boroughs to make Staffordshire more sustainable. The report notes that significant reduction in carbon emissions. That's 900 tonnes of CO2 since 2021-2022. And a further 2,600 tonnes in 2022-23, helping us to achieve that overall 50% reduction in emissions, as I said, since we declared that climate emergency. The Council is making a positive contribution to reducing its carbon emissions from our buildings. One example is the Kingston Centre, which has been refurbished as a school, with £795,000 funding from the Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund. This includes retrofitting, including 6 air source heat pumps, high insulation levels and solar PV installation as well. And it's expected to save 150 tonnes of carbon emissions annually. Staffordshire Highways is engaged on a pilot project to switch to hydrogenated vegetable oil, HVO, biofuel in the gritting fleet and other vehicles. This reduced carbon emissions by 60 tonnes in 3 months compared to conventional diesel, while also decreasing pollution levels by 84%. I know that the highways teams have got a plan to roll that out even further cutting our emissions in future. We've got our Climate Change Action Fund for our county councillors, which contained 73 grants last year, totalling £85,000, over £85,000 of grants to community groups, schools and charities. And projects included upgrading of lights to LED, tree planting, wildflower planting, increasing insulation and encouraging active travel through installation of bike racks in schools and community centres. And in the report there is a breakdown on a district basis of that funding for 2022-23, which just shows how we're spreading it across the county, across all our communities. And I'd like to thank the county councillors across this county that have helped to distribute that money, and all the community groups that have joined our charge towards making Staffordshire more sustainable through their actions in the work that they do. Last year, over £5 million was awarded to 427 properties in Staffordshire, and installing over 550 energy measures through the Staffordshire Warmer Homes scheme. And this is helping towards the overall reduction of carbon emissions across the county. And as I said earlier, the County Council is taking a leadership role in playing collaboration with our districts and boroughs through the Staffordshire Sustainability Board to jointly tackle climate change on a county-wide basis to maximise the impact that we can all have together to reduce our carbon emissions. And this year, the board, under our leadership, has refreshed its commitment and its 10 pledges to push that carbon levels down and publish also together our carbon reduction achievements annually in an annual report as well. The second part of this, of course, is that Climate Change Action Plan 3, which is an important part of setting our strategy up to 2025 and has 5 key theme areas. That's carbon reduction, improving air quality, natural environment, reducing waste, and also behavioural change through the various communication methods we've got as a county council and also with our partners. And the action plan has been developed with input from officers across this council, and I think that proves now that climate change and tackling climate change is embedded across this council, not only in officers but also I think in members. We're all champions of climate change and reducing climate change, and I think this action plan going forward is an indication of that. There's also a risk register, so we fully track and mitigate the risks associated with the plan, and of course there's that community impact assessment as well to show how it impacts our communities and how they can become involved in helping us to tackle climate change in the various areas which they can. Mr. Leader, we've made a significant progress in our commitment to tackle climate change, that 50% reduction in emissions. But we're not resting on our laurels because we have that ambitious action plan to take us forward as we strive to that overall net zero by 2050. And I would commend this report and the action plan and the associated documents to the Cabinet. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll move to the recommendations at the end of the debate. Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Thank you, and excellent report. Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Would be remiss of me not just to mention that the official opening of the St Leonard site is this afternoon, a fantastic facility that this authority has helped refurbished from a former empty county council building into a fantastic new school. And you're absolutely right, a huge amount of work has been done around the green agenda as well on that particular site. It's worth mentioning that we've done some biodiversity gain work as well, with some flood mitigation, new trees, bat boxes, and bug hotels. And any councillor that is free today who would like to pop along at 12:45 to come and see the opening of this fantastic new facility, you're more than welcome to join me. Thank you.
Councillor Jessel.
Thank you very much, Leader. And thank you very much for a very comprehensive annual report and an action plan. I think this authority has made significant progress over the last few years by taking what I would call a very practical and pragmatic approach. And it's interesting to see that I believe central government is now following a similar philosophy, and it's to be welcomed. In terms of the achievements, as we know, as we go along this journey, actually continuing to reduce our CO2 emissions is going to become more and more difficult. We've already picked the low-hanging fruit. We're still making progress, but it will become proportionally more difficult. And therefore, I think it's really important that we tackle one of the other key elements of CO2 is reducing the amount of waste we produce as a society. I know our recycling rates within Staffordshire have plateaued out and are not where we would like to see them. But I think, and I really welcome within the action plan, that there is an action there to develop a Staffordshire Materials Recovery Facility, or a MRF, to reduce haulage requirements. But I would like to also see in the future Staffordshire continuing to be operating with the ambition that it had when it developed the waste-to-energy plant in Four Ashes. That was quite a significant visionary step to take. We know that technology is advancing in terms of waste management, and actually now there are plants where you put all your waste in and it is mechanically and with the introduction of technology sifts out every element of recyclable material, and I understand that you can achieve rates of 80%. I think they're doing it in Germany. I think there is a small demonstration site in Aldridge. And I would like to see future plans actually start to look strategically at how we can reduce our overall waste, but the waste that we do have, ensure that we extract every single recyclable gram out of it that we possibly can. It's the way forward. It will continue, as this says, to reduce haulage requirements. But I think we've almost reached saturation point at which members of the public can recycle materials themselves. If you live in a small 2-up, 2-down terrace or in an apartment, it's very difficult to accommodate several different containers. So I congratulate the Cabinet member for the progress that's been made, for the plan as set out. But I do ask that perhaps in the future we can look to how science and technology can help us to continue on this journey and continue with our great successes. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Leader. And thank you, Councillor Tagg, for an excellent presentation. It would be remiss of me not to mention, when we're considering this item, the important role that the economy plays in driving this agenda. And in Staffordshire, we have a very strong focus, which, as Councillor Jessel mentioned a moment ago, seems to increasingly be the direction of travel for government, which is that we must not ask our residents to wear a hair shirt in order to achieve these important goals. With that in mind, Staffordshire is absolutely leading the way, particularly in terms of the decarbonisation of transport. And I'd highlight the wonderful work that's being done along the A50, A500 corridor, in particular with businesses such as JCB in Staffordshire and others such as Toyota, Rolls-Royce and Alstom along that corridor, developing hydrogen powertrains that increasingly you can buy in vehicles already, to decarbonise transport. I know government's paying increasing attention to what's happening along that corridor, including in Staffordshire, and their interest in investing in it, seeing that go further and faster, is something that we really welcome and encourage. But in addition to that, it's important that we're supporting all of our businesses, both in decarbonising their activities on an ongoing basis, but also developing the skills base amongst our workers in those jobs of the future. We're not in the business of picking winners amongst different sectors, but we are in the business of meeting need, both current and future, and it's really important that we have a workforce equipped to be able to do the things that we need them to do, hopefully meeting commercial opportunities that are profitable and productive for our economy. Very important work indeed. Thank you, Councillor Tagg.
Councillor DeVille.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tagg. An excellent report. And I note your words, Simon, in your presentation, that we're all embedded in this now. And I think you're exactly right. I've said on many, many occasions that looking after our environment, looking after future sustainability has got to be part of our day job. And I'm delighted and agree with you that it is absolutely a part of all of our day jobs. Councillor Price spoke of the Kingston Centre. What an excellent project, Leader. Kingston Centre is a real flagship in providing a facility for learning excellence, and it's also a flagship for providing a facility that's totally environmentally friendly and makes the very, very best use of our all-important resources, and will be, I'm sure, Councillor Price, a sustainable and a great facility moving forward, and provides a great start for young people as they move into their adult lives. An excellent report, Councillor Tagg, which I fully support, Chairman.
Thank you. Before I come back to Councillor Tagg, we've got a number of veterans of the Joint Waste Management Board for Staffordshire sitting around the table. In fact, I think at some point everybody's had a go at it. So we've all been vested in improving recycling rates and striving towards our recycling and climate, and by extension our climate change goals. Councillor Tagg, you were asked when you came and became the portfolio holder for climate change to make steady progress towards our objectives, and that is exactly what you're doing with your team, and you're able to demonstrate it in this report. And I think the public welcome positive steps towards achieving the goals that are important to them in ways that they can actually participate in without causing them too much difficulty. Councillor Jessel talks about a future. She's right to talk about her future because the technology will become available to allow us to become better at what we do. In the meantime, Councillor Tagg, I thank you for your efforts on this and your team, and thank you for continuing that progress, which I'm absolutely delighted about. If I could just come back to you for a response and then also the recommendations.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for those comments, Cabinet colleagues. I think on the net zero building, I think that's the way forward now, isn't it? Any development that the county brings forward has to have that elements in there, and of course the Kingston Centre is a perfect example of how we can do that. I think those, as you said, Leader, I think it was Councillor Jessel said as well about those practical steps getting to where we want to go, you know, and taking everybody along with us is really key as well. And I think that's what we've got here, a sensible approach to reaching net zero and to climate change and improving our environment and bringing back nature through our nature recovery strategy, which is working in parallel along with the plans we've got at the moment. I think that reuse of items is really key to us, and we're going to be bringing forward a paper pretty soon on circular economy and the circular economy for Staffordshire, which will be really key to reusing stuff before it even gets into the stream of either waste or recycling. And I think the government have now started in their announcements just recently to simplify the process of recycling so that most people will understand it more and be able to use it more, and also to bring in other streams of recycling as well, which I think is key to moving forward as well. So I think a really good picture, I think, again, not resting on our laurels, there's a long way to go, but to reach that 50% is really a key achievement for this council and for our staff, and I'd like to give a congratulations to our sustainability staff that coordinate this, but also to all our staff across the council who have contributed, whether it's in highways, whether it's in property and buildings, whether it's in social care, or whether it's in highways, as I've just said, you know, across the board. I think it's really, really a team effort that has got us to this. So I will now read the recommendations, Leader, and that is one, note that the Council's Climate Change 2022-23 annual report records the positive progress that has been made on our journey and target to net zero by 2050, and that B, we approve the Climate Change Action Plan Revision 3, November 2023, which lists our key climate change mitigation actions over the next 2 years. I move those, Leader.
All those in favour?
Agreed.
And for the record, that is unanimous. Moving on then to the next item on the agenda, which is the Staffordshire Employment and Skills Strategy 2023 to 2030, brought to you by the Deputy Leader, Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Leader. So this strategy follows hot on the heels of our economic strategy, a rural economic strategy, which we developed following the pandemic, and with the aim of giving the authority a long-term strategic direction in terms of economic development. The final part of that is this strategy, employability and skills. It represents a key strand in our strategic plan, which is that everyone in Staffordshire will have access to more good jobs and share the benefits of economic growth. But it also responds to developing national policy, particularly the Skills for Jobs White Paper and the Skills and Post-16 Education Act 2022. So this is our response to that national policy, but also to the particular needs of Staffordshire, and to our imperative that we have a long-term plan that we can work towards in terms of developing our economy in the way that we think is best for our residents. It also recognises the particular position that the County Council holds within the County of Staffordshire in terms of those levers that we have within the economy due to our responsibilities for areas such as transport, infrastructure, environment, education, skills and health. We really are the big tent within which the county can gather to deliver this type of cross-cutting requirement, and skills really is a cross-cutting requirement. Whatever area of activity you are considering, it's important that we have people with the right skills and who are employable in the roles that we have out there. In terms of the context of Staffordshire right now, we've had considerable success in terms of developing the skills of our residents and improving their situation in terms of employment. So the improvement in the number of residents with no qualifications from 2016 to 21, for example, has seen the number of people with no qualifications in Staffordshire reduced by nearly 8,000 which is a 19.5% reduction compared to a 17% reduction nationally. Similarly, the gap in terms of the number of working age people in Staffordshire without a level 3 plus qualification, so that's A level or equivalent, has improved by 30,500 people during the same period, again outstripping the national average. And finally, wage growth, as we were discussing earlier in the economy update, has improved by 16.5% in Staffordshire compared to 14.2% for England during the same period. So there's great progress there. Having said that, although I won't delve into too many statistics, nonetheless, our levels of qualifications are slightly below the national average for England still, and our wage levels are also slightly below that national average. So there is further to go in this, and that really is the purpose, both of our economic strategy, but also of this employability and skills strategy within that. In developing the strategy, we've worked very closely with partners. This is absolutely a partnership game. So in particular, we've worked closely with our education providers, so our FE colleges, our universities, with our local chambers of commerce and other business representative groups, and crucially with businesses themselves to establish what their needs are, and then through the skills providers, how they can most effectively deliver on those needs. We've also consulted extensively within the County Council, and particularly some really detailed scrutiny sessions through our Prosperous Staffordshire Select Committee. So this is a piece of work that has real integrity behind it, and we're quite confident is fit for purpose in terms of the priorities within it. Coming on to those priorities, there are two cross-cutting priorities that sit across the 5 specific strands that I'll mention in a moment, and those are developing digital skills and green skills. Apropos our previous agenda item, we consider those to be essential across all areas of activity, wherever you are in terms of your educational journey and career journey. And those in particular will also help us support new innovative and productive technologies as we transition our economy towards net zero. On to the specific priorities. So the first of those is ensuring that we're all work ready and that we can access employment. The second is providing inspirational careers advice. The third is developing strong technical skills to drive productivity and growth. The fourth is supporting innovation and enterprise, particularly, as I've mentioned earlier, within digital and skills. And the fifth is creating a place of learning. And I'll just dwell on this one for a moment. Skills acquisition is not just something that you do at the beginning of your working life. It is essential that we develop a culture in Staffordshire, and we've gone some way towards this already, but we have some way further to go, where people are acquiring skills throughout their careers, and they don't simply treat it as something they do up to the age of 21. So creating that environment where people both expect that, but also find it easy to move through phases in their careers where they have learning that matches it, is particularly important to us. So those are the 5 areas of specific focus within the strategy, and I'm happy to discuss any of those further if colleagues have any questions. Crucial to this, of course, is also delivery, and our delivery will be particularly focused on working in partnership with those organisations I mentioned earlier, but we will also be creating a delivery plan with an accountability model within that, where we will be able to scrutinise the performance of this strategy going forwards. I think I've probably said enough there, Leader, so I'll pause and let colleagues ask any questions before I read the recommendations.
One of the plus sides of a fulsome introduction is that everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. One of the downsides of a fulsome introduction is that you often end up with relatively few questions, but let's see. Councillor Sutton.
It's not a question, more of a comment. And just how this links to the item that I introduced about early years and provision for parents to be able to have that childcare so that they can get back into or stay in the workplace. So those two things do link quite nicely, and it was just that comment, not a question.
Councillor DeVille.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, another excellent report. It's so important, isn't it, this? I think the objectives are really, really important, Councillor White, particularly around technical skills, around future enterprise. These objectives then will inevitably lead to greater productivity, greater output. And I think key to this, you mentioned it, this is a really good partnership working piece of work. It's essential that we work in partnership, and I think this is a partnership that's really working. You were speaking around the delivery plan. Just a quick question. How do you propose that you measure on an ongoing basis how successful that delivery plan is, and how will that be reported back to the people of Staffordshire?
Thank you very much for those two questions. So, firstly to Councillor Sutton, and I was tempted to raise my hand during his agenda item earlier because I don't think it's a declarable interest, but as many of you know, I've got an early years child at the moment who's benefiting from excellent care and early years education in Staffordshire, and the workers in his nursery exemplify the skills requirements that all jobs of all types require in Staffordshire now. The early years development framework that they work towards is incredibly detailed, and seeing the work that they do on a day-to-day basis with my child and others is really quite an eye-opener. You think it's just a bit of play and childcare at your peril. It's not, and that exemplifies the world that we live in now, doesn't it? So thank you very much to them. Regarding the delivery plan, our intention is that we will be developing a set of performance indicators based on the strategy, which we intend to take to scrutiny, so back to the Prosperous Staffordshire Select Committee, so that they can agree that those are appropriate KPIs, and then we will have that scrutinised initially 6 months after the rollout of the strategy, and then on an annual basis. And I also anticipate that we'll be bringing reports back here on a periodic basis. Thank you.
Councillor Northcote.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Deputy Leader, for this excellent report. Really encouraged to see the technical level 3 and level 4 qualifications improving. I think what lies behind this are the added benefits that this will bring. You know, parents that feel equipped to even tackle their offspring's homework, and a feel of a feeling of being able to keep the family unit together, and not a feeling of being useless and not being able to interact with their child. I think this is a marvellous aspiration to keep up with. That's nothing but really special for Staffordshire, and I'm really encouraged by this report, and I hope we can continue in the future to improve it even further. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White, if you could sum up and give us the recommendations, please.
Yep, thank you for that, Councillor Northcote. I don't think it requires a response other than to agree with you wholeheartedly. So on to the recommendations. There are two. The first is that Cabinet approves the employment and skills strategy, and the second is that, working with those Cabinet members with associated responsibilities, the Director for Economy, Infrastructure and Skills be authorised to progress the development of supporting delivery plans, working with our partners as appropriate. Thank you, Leader.
You've heard the recommendations. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we move on then to the Treasury Management Report for the half year ended 30th of September 2023. You'll notice that Councillor Parry is not here today, so it falls to me, a younger and probably slightly better looking version than the incumbent, to deliver the Treasury Management Report for 1st of April 23 to the 30th of September 2023, and I'm not seeing any nods of agreement, which is disappointing, but nevertheless I shall press on with the Treasury Management Report. Staffordshire County Council is a well-run council, and we continue to manage our finances prudently while doing and spending what is required. By using cash reserves rather than borrowing more, we have been able to achieve substantial savings in what remain challenging times. The economic context the council operates in remains extremely volatile at present, and you will all be aware of that from newspaper reports you've been reading. The UK gross domestic product, or GDP, fell by 0.5% in July 2023, suggesting that underlying growth has slowed since the beginning of the year, with 10 out of 17 sectors falling, with GDP standing at 0.2% for the first quarter of the year and projected to contract in the second half of 2023, which I think we'll all agree is not good news. However, CPI eased from 6.8% in July to 6.7% in August and is now down at 4.6%, as Councillor White indicated in his earlier report. This is a marked reduction from last year's figures and is to be welcomed. The gap between the UK inflation and other economies has now narrowed, and anybody listening to the radio this morning will have heard the United States inflation rates, which I think are down to 3.6% as at this morning. Interest rates have risen from 0.1% in December 2021 to the current 5.25%, and this could be the peak, but we couldn't rule out another rise. So the Council's strategy of using cash in lieu of borrowing means that there is a potential saving of £557,000 this year. In consultation with our independent Treasury advisors, Link, the Council has repaid £50 million of debt, which will save the county around £199,000 per annum. The Treasury Management Panel, chaired by the Director of Finance, meets monthly to review Treasury activity. The main objective is to invest money securely, and that's why I believe these reports are particularly important, that we hear them every 6 months to make sure we get our money back. It isn't that long ago when we had the Icelandic bank scandal, and lots of councils lost quite a lot of money in the process. The Council uses money market funds, government deposits and term investments with high-quality counterparties. The Council earned 4.21% on its investments in the first half of 23-24, lagging behind the benchmark in a rising market, as explained in paragraph 39 of the report. The prudential indicators for the first half of 23-24 are shown at Appendix 2, all within specified limits. In addition to being prudent, our low-risk investment approach, which focuses on lending to low-risk institutions, means that we have been well placed to deal with challenges arising from difficulties in the current global economy presents. So before I move on to the recommendations, if you want to ask questions, I can take questions, but whether or not I can answer them is another matter. So it might be one that I'll get back to you in writing. So, Cabinet colleagues, does anybody really want to ask me any questions about the Treasury Management Report, or would you like to ask Councillor Parry when he returns? Don't even think about it. Straight on to the recommendations. Good, thank you for no questions. Oh, Councillor Jessel, how disappointing, how delightful.
No, I'm not going to ask a question, but I thought it would be remiss not to compliment the financial management of this authority. As you've explained, we've gone through an extremely volatile period, both in terms of inflation and interest rates, which makes actually trying to manage these processes, you need at least one, if not 100 crystal balls. And I think we need to acknowledge the fact that without the good management and the stability that's given, we wouldn't be in the position that we're in. You know, so I'm not going to ask you a question so you can be relieved of that, but I think it would be remiss, you know, not to pass comment on the very sound management of our finances. Thank you.
And Councillor Jessel, thank you very much indeed for taking that opportunity. I too would like to thank Rob Salmon and his team for all the hard work you've done over many years. You and I go back a long way now, and we worked together on the audit committee together back 14 years ago, and we've delivered consistently good treasury management, and this is the sort of thing that we'd like to see. And we've also had a strategy that I recall from many years ago of being our attitude to risk has been moderate to low, and as a result of that, we've been able to have consistently good performance. It is always interesting and exciting to go for those high-risk investments, isn't it? But sometimes pursuit of high returns also means pursuit of risk, and I'm not in the business of risking taxpayers' money on risky gambles. You've seen other authorities who've done that over the years, and they are suffering as a consequence of it. So thank you to your team. If you could pass that on, I am grateful. Good. Nobody else asking any questions. Is that wink from Councillor Jessel, which I know means I've got one and I could do it, but I'm not going to because I'm kind. 2 recommendations. That Cabinet note the Treasury management activities for the half year ended 30th of September 2023. And secondly, that Cabinet note the early repayment of £50 million to the Public Works Loan Board as discussed in paragraph 30. Do I have your approval to those 2 recommendations?
Agreed.
That is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on then to decisions taken by Cabinet members under delegated powers. We have just one for the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People in approving the name change and rebranding for the existing 11 Children's Centre in Staffordshire and 2 additional County Council buildings, Family First at Faraday Road in Stafford and Family First at Basin Lane in Tamworth, into family hubs. Next is the agenda item 12, the forward plan of key decisions. First of all, on the 13th of December in public, the medium-term financial strategy 24-29. A lot of work is going on in that area. I know that the corporate scrutiny committee is working on an MTF medium-term financial strategy working group. They will come up with some recommendations in due course, which will feed into that. And we happen to have Councillor Wilcox with us now, who is chairing that. And thank you for all the work you're doing on that, Councillor Wilcox. Older People Adult Social Care Commissioning Strategy 24-29, brought to you by Councillor Jessel. Families in private families health and wellbeing 0-19 services, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton. Again in private in December, drug and alcohol services, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Health and Care, Councillor Jessel. Moving forward into January in public, provision of services for children and young people, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton. Residential overnight education, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton, and the Cabinet Member for Education and SEND, Councillor Price. Service provision of temporary and interim human resources, brought to you by myself. In private, unregulated placements, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton. To the 24th of January in public, the medium-term financial strategy 24-29, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, Councillor Parry. The sharp-eyed amongst you will have noticed there are 2 slots for the medium-term financial strategy because we rely on the government giving us the settlement before we can actually go out to the wider world on the MTFS, and that is the reason why it appears twice. Moving forward to February in public, Integrated Performance Report Quarter 3, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources and myself. Equalities, Diversity and Inclusion Progress Update, brought to you by myself. And then in private in March, Burton Regeneration, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Communities and Culture, Councillor Wilson. In public in March, Capital Programme for Schools 24-25, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Education and SEND. In April in public, Children and Young People's Emotional Health and Wellbeing Service, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton. In private, Unregulated Placement Update, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton. And that concludes the forward plan of key decisions. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the exclusion of the public. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting from the following items of business which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended of the Local Government Act 1972 indicated below. Thank you.